My name is Margaret Chun, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 66 years old now, and when I look at my hands, these worn, wrinkled hands that have washed a million shirts, folded 10 million sheets, I see my entire life written in every line and scar. These hands crossed an ocean. These hands built a business from nothing. These hands raised a daughter alone. And these hands once held a ring that would destroy everything I loved. I was born in 1959 in a small village outside Guangzhou, China. Back then, my family had nothing but each other and a few precious heirlooms passed down through generations. Life was simple, hard, and beautiful in ways I didn't understand until I lost it all. My mother used to say that our family treasures weren't made of gold or jade. They were made of sacrifice and hope. She was right, but not in the way she thought. Today, I sit in my small apartment above what used to be my laundry business in Chicago. The machines are silent now. The steam that once filled these rooms has vanished like my dreams. My daughter hasn't called in 3 months. My granddaughter doesn't know my voice. And somewhere in California, in a house I helped buy, someone wears my family's ring on her finger. The same ring she called worthless trash before she took it. How does a mother's love turn into a stranger's silence? How does a family heirloom become a weapon? I'm going to tell you everything, from the beginning, because this story isn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who ever sacrificed everything for their children, only to wonder if love was enough. It belongs to anyone who ever learned that the things we treasure most can't be measured in dollars or gold. But first, let me tell you about the day I was 57 years old, standing in my own home, watching my daughter-in-law's eyes flash with greed as she reached for the ring I kept in a small box by my bed. That day changed everything. That day, I learned that family can be more dangerous than strangers, and that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people you loved most, if you've ever wondered whether sacrifice means anything in this world, stay with me. Subscribe, because this story gets darker before it finds light. And maybe, just maybe, my mistakes can help you avoid your own. I remember the smell of my mother's kitchen in Guangzhou, steamed buns, pickled vegetables, and the faint scent of incense from the altar where we honored our ancestors. We were poor, but we never felt poor. My parents, my 2 brothers, and I lived in a 2-room house with walls so thin you could hear the neighbors arguing 3 houses down. But we had laughter. We had stories. We had each other. My father worked in a factory making textiles. His hands were always stained with dye, blues and reds that never quite washed out. My mother took in sewing, her needle flying through fabric so fast it looked like magic. I was the youngest and the only girl, which meant I was both spoiled and expected to help with everything. My brothers teased me constantly, but they also protected me, like I was made of glass. When I was 7, my grandmother pulled me aside one afternoon and showed me a small wooden box. Inside was a ring, silver, with a dark red stone that caught the light like captured fire. "This ring," she said, her voice soft and serious, "has been in our family for 6 generations. It will be yours one day, Margaret. Keep it safe. It carries our family's story." I didn't understand what she meant then. It looked pretty but simple, nothing like the gold jewelry I saw in shop windows downtown. But I nodded and promised I would protect it. Years later, I would learn that my grandmother had sewn the ring into the lining of my coat when she heard I was leaving China. She never told me. I only found it months after I arrived in America, when winter came and I needed that coat desperately. Growing up, I was a good student. I loved mathematics and dreamed of becoming a teacher. But in 1976, when I was 17, everything changed. The Cultural Revolution was ending, but its scars remained everywhere. My father lost his job at the factory. My oldest brother was sent to work in the countryside. Our family, already struggling, began to break apart under the weight of poverty and political chaos. My mother's sister had immigrated to Hong Kong years earlier. She sent us letters describing a life we couldn't imagine. Enough food, opportunities, hope. When I turned 23, my aunt offered to sponsor me to come to Hong Kong. My parents cried when they told me I should go. "You're our hope," my father said, his dye-stained hands holding mine. "Go build a better life. Then maybe you can help your brothers." Leaving was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I packed one small suitcase with clothes, a few photographs, and my grandmother's wooden box. I didn't know I'd never see my parents again. My father died of a heart attack 2 years later. My mother followed him within 6 months. They say she died of pneumonia, but I know she died of a broken heart. I wasn't there to say goodbye to either of them. Hong Kong was overwhelming. The buildings reached into the sky like giants. The streets never slept. People moved so fast, talked so loud, wanted everything now, now, now. I lived with my aunt and her family in a tiny apartment in Kowloon. I worked in a garment factory during the day and took English classes at night. My fingers bled from the sewing machines. My eyes burned from the fluorescent lights. But I was learning. I was surviving. That's where I met David Chen. He worked in the same factory, managing the shipping department. He was quiet, kind, and he noticed me, really noticed me, not just as another worker, but as a person. He started bringing me tea during breaks. We'd talk about our dreams during lunch. He wanted to go to America. He had a cousin in Chicago who owned a restaurant and promised him a job. When David asked me to marry him 6 months later, I said yes. Not because I was swept away by passion. I barely knew what romantic love felt like. I said yes because he offered partnership, safety, and a shared dream of something better. We married in a simple ceremony with just my aunt's family as witnesses. 3 months later, we boarded a plane to America. I was 25 years old. I spoke broken English. I had $200 hidden in my shoe and my grandmother's ring sewn into my coat lining. I thought I was flying toward a new beginning. I had no idea how much I would lose before I found anything worth keeping. Chicago in January 1984 was the coldest place I'd ever experienced. The wind came off Lake Michigan like knives cutting through my thin coat, the same coat with my grandmother's ring hidden inside. David and I arrived at O'Hare Airport with our 2 suitcases and hearts full of nervous hope. His cousin picked us up in an old car that smelled like cigarettes and drove us to Chinatown, where we'd be living in a room above the restaurant. The room was smaller than our apartment in Hong Kong. 1 bed, 1 chair, a hot plate, and a bathroom we shared with 2 other families. But it was ours. David started working at the restaurant immediately, 12, sometimes 14 hours a day, washing dishes, preparing vegetables, whatever was needed. I found work at a laundry service a few blocks away, pressing shirts and folding linens. The pay was terrible, but the owner was Chinese and didn't ask too many questions about my immigration status. Those first years were brutal. My hands cracked and bled from the hot water and harsh detergents. David came home every night smelling of grease and exhaustion. We barely saw each other. When I was working, he was sleeping, and when he was working, I was sleeping. We had 1 day off together each month, and we spent it doing laundry, buying groceries, and sleeping. But we were saving. Every penny we didn't need for survival went into a coffee can hidden under our bed. We had a dream, our own business. David wanted a restaurant. I wanted something simpler, something I understood, a laundry service. We argued about it sometimes, but gently, because we were both too tired to fight. When I got pregnant in 1986, We hadn't planned it. I cried when I saw the test result, not from joy but from fear. How could we afford a child? Where would a baby sleep? David held me and promised everything would be okay. He took on extra shifts. I worked until I was 8 months pregnant, standing at the pressing machine with my swollen belly touching the counter, sweat running down my back. Lisa was born on September 15th, 1986. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a full head of black hair and lungs that could wake the entire building. The moment they placed her in my arms, everything changed. I looked at her tiny face and understood what my parents had felt when they sent me away. This little girl was everything now. Every sacrifice, every aching muscle, every lonely moment, it was all for her. I went back to work when Lisa was 3 weeks old. I had no choice. My aunt's daughter watched her during the day. I'd rush home during my lunch break to breastfeed, my shirt soaked with milk, my heart breaking every time I had to leave her crying. David and I were like ghosts passing in the night, both of us exhausted, both of us determined to give our daughter something better. When Lisa was 2, David's cousin offered to sell us his restaurant. He wanted to move to California, start fresh. It seemed like the opportunity we'd been waiting for. David was ecstatic. I was terrified. We'd have to take out a loan, use all our savings, work even harder than before. But David was so excited, so sure this was our path to success. I loved him, so I agreed. The restaurant failed within 18 months. David was a hard worker, but a terrible businessman. He let suppliers cheat him. He couldn't say no to customers who promised to pay next time. He hired too many people, paid them too much, charged too little for the food. I watched our savings disappear. I watched him stop sleeping, stop smiling, stop being the gentleman I'd married. The stress broke something in him. He started drinking, nothing terrible at first, just a beer or 2 after closing. But it grew. Soon he was coming home late, smelling of alcohol, his eyes empty. We argued. Lisa, now 4 years old, would hide under her bed when we fought, her small hands covering her ears. One night, David didn't come home at all. I found him the next morning sleeping in the closed restaurant, an empty bottle next to him. That's when I knew, if I wanted to save my daughter's future, I had to save it myself. I took the remaining money from our coffee can, everything we had left after the restaurant debts, and I did something that terrified me. I walked into a bank and asked about a small business loan. The banker, a white man in an expensive suit, looked at me like I was speaking another language. My English was still broken. I had no credit. I had nothing but determination and a desperate plan. I don't know why he approved the loan. Maybe he saw something in my eyes. Maybe he had a quota to fill. Whatever the reason, 2 weeks later, I signed papers I barely understood and became the owner of a tiny laundry business on the South Side. It was run down, barely functional, but it was mine. The laundry was a disaster when I bought it. 2 broken washing machines, a pressing machine that sparked dangerously, walls stained yellow from years of steam and smoke, and a front window so dirty you couldn't see through it. But it was mine. I scrubbed those walls until my hands bled. I taught myself to fix the machines by watching YouTube videos. Yes, even in my 40s, I learned to navigate the internet. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. David helped at first. He'd watch Lisa in the evenings while I worked late. But his heart wasn't in it. The restaurant failure had broken something fundamental in him. He drank more. He became distant, living in our apartment like a ghost while I built my business. Lisa learned early that Mama was always working and Daddy was always sad. My daughter grew up in that laundry. She did her homework on the folding table, the smell of detergent her childhood perfume. She learned to fold towels before she learned to read. Customers knew her name, brought her candy, told her she was lucky to have such a hardworking mother. But I saw the loneliness in her eyes. I saw how other kids had mothers who picked them up from school, who had time for birthday parties and play dates. I missed so much. I missed her first school play because I had a massive order to finish. I missed her 10th birthday party because the pressing machine broke, and I couldn't afford to close for even one day. I missed parent-teacher conferences, soccer games, science fairs. I told myself I was building her future. I told myself she'd understand one day. But with every missed moment, I saw her pulling away. The business grew, though. By the time Lisa was 12, I had 3 employees and was making enough to move us to a better apartment. David started working at a warehouse, steady work, steady pay, and it seemed to help him drink less. We weren't happy, but we were stable. I thought maybe we'd finally made it through the hardest part. That's when I found my grandmother's ring again. I was moving clothes from our old apartment to the new one when I found my old coat, the one I'd worn on the plane from Hong Kong. It was too small for me now, worn and outdated. I was going to throw it away when I felt something hard in the lining. I remembered my grandmother's words from so many years ago, and my hands started shaking as I carefully opened the seam. The ring was still there. The silver had tarnished slightly, and the red stone looked darker than I remembered, but it was intact. I held it up to the light, and something about it looked different than I remembered. The craftsmanship seemed more intricate. The weight felt more substantial. I put it on my finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for me all this time. I took it to a jeweler, just curious about cleaning it. The old Chinese jeweler took one look at it, and his eyes went wide. He asked me to wait and disappeared into the back room with my ring. 20 minutes later, he returned with his hands trembling. "Mrs. Chen," he said, "do you know what this is?" The ring wasn't just a family heirloom. The stone was a rare type of ruby called pigeon's blood, deep red with a slight purple hue, found only in Myanmar. The setting was late Qing dynasty silver work. Together, conservatively, the ring was worth somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000. Maybe more to the right collector. I couldn't breathe. $50,000. That was Lisa's entire college education. That was security. That was everything I'd been working for, hidden in my coat lining for 20 years. The jeweler warned me to insure it immediately to keep it safe. He offered to buy it on the spot for $45,000. I said no. This ring had survived wars, poverty, immigration, and loss. It had traveled across oceans to stay with my family. My grandmother had trusted me with it. Whatever its monetary value, its real worth was in the generations of women who'd protected it. I decided I would keep it safe and one day give it to Lisa. That was my first mistake. I should have sold it right then. I should have taken that money and invested in my daughter's future in practical ways. But I was sentimental. I thought the ring meant something beyond money. I thought Lisa would want this connection to her heritage, to the great-grandmother she'd never met. Instead, I took the ring home and put it in a small locked box in my bedroom drawer. I didn't tell David. His drinking was getting worse again, and I didn't trust him not to pawn it during a bad night. I didn't tell Lisa either. She was 15 now, more interested in her American friends and American culture than anything Chinese. She barely spoke Cantonese anymore. She was embarrassed when I packed her traditional foods for lunch. She was pulling away, and I didn't know how to stop it. I told myself I'd give her the ring for her wedding. I imagined her face when I explained its history, its value, its meaning. I imagined her finally understanding all the sacrifices, finally seeing that everything I'd done had been for her. In my mind, that ring would bridge the gap growing between us. I was so So wrong. Lisa left for college in 2004, attending Northwestern University on a partial scholarship. I'd saved enough to cover the rest, working every day for 18 years to make that moment possible. The day I drove her to the dorm, I cried the whole way home. David sat in the passenger seat in silence. He'd been sober for 3 months, the longest stretch in years, but I could see him fighting the urge with every mile. My daughter rarely came home during college. She had internships, friends, study groups, a whole life I wasn't part of. When she did visit, she seemed like a stranger. She changed her name from Lisa to Liz. She corrected my English constantly. She brought boyfriends who looked uncomfortable in our small apartment. She'd become American in ways I didn't understand, leaving behind anything that connected her to China, to me, to who we'd been. I was proud and heartbroken at the same time. Isn't that what I'd wanted? For her to have opportunities I'd never had, to fit into this country in ways I never could. But watching her drift away felt like losing her all over again, every single visit. David died in January 2020, 2 months before the world shut down for COVID. Heart attack, sudden and massive. He was at work, organizing shipments, when he just collapsed. He was 62 years old. We'd been married 36 years. And I realized at his funeral that I'd stopped really knowing him somewhere along the way. We'd been partners in survival, but had forgotten to be partners in life. Lisa came home for the funeral with her fiancé, Marcus. He was a corporate lawyer, handsome and polished, exactly the kind of successful American man I'd hoped she'd find. They'd been dating for 2 years, and this was the first time I was meeting him. That hurt, but I said nothing. I was grieving my husband and didn't have the energy to fight with my daughter about why she'd hidden her relationship from me. Marcus was polite but distant. I could see him looking at our apartment, at the laundry business, at me with my accented English and simple clothes. I could see him categorizing me as the immigrant mother who'd served her purpose, but was now just an embarrassing relic of his fiancée's past. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony during COVID restrictions. Only 20 people allowed. Lisa told me she'd send me pictures. She got married without me there. She said it was because of the pandemic, because of restrictions, because traveling was dangerous. But I knew the truth. She didn't want me there. She didn't want Marcus's family and friends to see where she came from. I cried for 3 days straight. Then I got angry. Then I got back to work, because work was all I knew. Lisa and Marcus bought a house in California. Tech money, she said vaguely when I asked how they could afford it. She called once a month, conversations lasting no more than 10 minutes. She was busy, always so busy. When I asked when I could visit, she said they were renovating. Maybe next year. She'd let me know. Then, in 2016, when I was 57 years old, Lisa came home for the first time in 18 months. She brought Marcus's mother, Diana, who wanted to see where Liz grew up. I should have known something was wrong from how Lisa said it. That fake, cheerful voice that meant she was embarrassed. I cleaned the apartment until every surface shone. I cooked for 2 days, dumplings, roasted duck, all of Lisa's childhood favorites. I wanted to show Diana that I was a good mother, that I'd raised Lisa well, that we might be poor, but we had love and culture and history. Diana walked through my home like she was touring a museum of poverty. She smiled too much, complimented everything in that voice people use when they're trying to be nice about something they find distasteful. Lisa looked mortified the entire time, apologizing with her eyes for things that didn't need apologies. That evening, I wanted to give Lisa something. I'd been saving the ring for her wedding, but they'd already married without me. This visit felt like maybe a second chance, a way to connect. I brought out the small locked box and opened it carefully. "Lisa," I said, "I have something that belonged to your great-great-great-great-grandmother." It's been in our family for 6 generations. I showed them the ring. I told them its story. I told them about my grandmother sewing it into my coat, about carrying it across oceans, about discovering its value. I told them it was worth at least $50,000, maybe more. Diana's eyes lit up immediately, not with the warmth of connection to family history, but with that cold glitter of appraisal. She asked if she could see it closer. I hesitated, but handed it over. She turned it in the light, examining it from every angle. 50,000, she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. Lisa, sweetie, your mother's been scammed. This is costume jewelry. The stone is glass. The setting is silver-plated at best. I have several pieces like this from estate sales, worth maybe $100 to the right collector. The air in my living room turned cold. I watched my daughter's face, waiting for her to defend me, to tell Diana that I wasn't stupid, that I'd had it appraised by a professional. But Lisa said nothing. She just looked embarrassed, like this was one more proof of her immigrant mother's foolishness. No, I said firmly. I had it professionally appraised. The stone is a pigeon's blood ruby. The setting is Qing Dynasty silver. It's worth $50,000 to $70,000. Diana laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, sweetie, I'm sure whoever appraised it was trying to be nice. Chinese shops in neighborhoods like this, they tell old ladies what they want to hear. But I've been collecting antique jewelry for 20 years. This is a very nice replica, but it's not real. I felt my face burning. I started to argue, to defend the jeweler, to explain that he'd been reputable, that he'd offered to buy it from me. But Diana just patted my hand like I was a confused child and changed the subject. They left the next morning. Lisa hugged me goodbye with that same stiff embrace she'd been giving me since college. Diana thanked me for my hospitality with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I watched them drive away and felt something breaking inside my chest. 3 weeks later, Lisa called. She was pregnant. She and Marcus were expecting their first child. I was going to be a grandmother. She sounded happier than I'd heard her in years, and for a moment, all the hurt dissolved. This was a new chance. A grandchild. Maybe this baby would bring us back together. Mama, she said at the end of the call, I need to ask you something. Marcus and I are buying a bigger house for the baby, and we're a little short on the down payment. I know you have some money saved. Could you help us? My savings. The money I'd been setting aside for decades, working 16-hour days, never taking vacations, never buying myself anything nice. I had about $60,000 saved. I'd planned to use it for retirement, maybe sell the laundry, and finally rest. But this was my daughter. This was my future grandchild. How much do you need? I asked. 30,000, she said. I know it's a lot, but we'll pay you back. Once Marcus makes partner, we'll... Yes, I said before she could finish. I'll transfer it tomorrow. Really? She sounded shocked. Mama, thank you. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to us. I did know. It meant I'd work until I died. It meant no retirement, no rest, no reward for 40 years of sacrifice. But it also meant my daughter needed me. It meant I was still useful to her. So I smiled and told her I was happy to help. She promised to visit after the baby was born. She promised to stay in touch better. She promised things would be different now. I believed her because I needed to believe her. My granddaughter, Emma, was born in November 2016. Lisa sent me a single photo, a tiny face scrunched up and red, wrapped in a pink blanket. I stared at that photo for hours, memorizing every detail. I asked when I could visit. Lisa said maybe after the holidays. Things were crazy with a newborn. She'd let me know. The holidays passed. 6 months passed. A year passed. I saw my granddaughter growing up through photos sent in text messages 3 or 4 times a year. I sent money for birthdays, for Christmas, for no reason at all. I sent gifts that went unacknowledged. I called and got voicemail. I was watching my daughter's life through a window I couldn't open. The laundry kept me going. My regular customers became my family. Mrs. Washington, who'd been bringing me her husband's work shirts for 15 years, noticed I looked tired. She started bringing me homemade soup. Mr. Park, who owned the restaurant next door, saved me leftovers. These strangers showed me more care than my own daughter. I was 63 years old and utterly alone. David was gone. Lisa was gone. My parents and brothers were gone. I'd sacrificed everything for a future that didn't include me. And I still had that ring in a box, waiting for a moment that would never come. Then everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon in February 2023. I was folding sheets when my phone rang. It was Diana, Marcus's mother. She'd never called me directly before. "Margaret," she said in that syrupy voice, "I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Lisa is so busy with Emma, and I wanted to talk to you about something. You know, that ring you showed us a few years ago, the one you said was valuable." My stomach dropped. "Yes. Well, I've been thinking about it. I have a friend who's a real appraiser, not one of those neighborhood shops, but a genuine expert. Would you mind if I had him look at it, just to give you a proper valuation? You should really know what you have for insurance purposes." I should have said no. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse. But Diana's voice was so reasonable, so concerned, so helpful. And part of me wanted to prove she'd been wrong. Part of me wanted a real expert to tell her that she'd been dismissive and ignorant. "I already had it appraised," I said. "Years ago." "Oh, I'm sure, but the market changes. Values fluctuate. My friend works with Christie's auction house. He's the best. Just think about it, okay? Lisa mentioned you might be selling it to help with Emma's education fund." She paused. "That's so generous of you, by the way. You're such a wonderful grandmother." Lisa had told her about the ring. Lisa had discussed selling my family heirloom. I felt betrayed, but also guilty. Wasn't I being selfish, keeping this valuable thing when it could help my granddaughter? "Let me think about it," I said. Of course. No pressure. I just want to help. We're family now, right?" She called again 3 days later. Then Lisa called, asking casually if I'd thought about Diana's offer. Then Marcus called, which he never did, explaining that if the ring really was valuable, I should have proper documentation for insurance purposes. They were tag-teaming me, and I was too tired to fight. I agreed to let Diana's expert look at it. She said she'd fly to Chicago the following week, bring the appraiser, and we'd get everything sorted out. I felt relieved. Honestly, maybe I'd been wrong about Diana. Maybe she really was trying to help. Diana arrived on a Thursday with a man named Robert who carried a briefcase full of equipment. He was professional, friendly, and spent an hour examining the ring under various lights and magnifiers. Diana made tea in my kitchen like she owned the place, chatting about Emma, about Lisa's new promotion, about their lives that I wasn't part of. Finally, Robert finished. He looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Chun," he said slowly, "I don't know who appraised this for you originally, but I'm afraid they gave you incorrect information. This stone is synthetic ruby, created in a lab. The setting is silver plate, likely early 20th century, but not Qing dynasty. As a historical piece from your family, it has sentimental value. But market value? I'd estimate $300 to $500. The room tilted. $300. $50,000 had become $300. Everything I believed about my grandmother's gift, about my family's history, about having something valuable to leave my daughter, all of it was a lie. Diana made sympathetic noises. She squeezed my hand. She said the original jeweler had probably been trying to make me feel good, that it happened all the time with older immigrants, that I shouldn't feel bad. But I did feel bad. I felt stupid and foolish and poor in ways I'd never felt before. The important thing, Diana said gently, is that you know the truth now. No point keeping something like this locked away. Is there? Emma loves dress up. Maybe Lisa could give it to her to play with. Something in her voice made me look up. Diana was staring at the ring with that same hungry look she'd had the first time she saw it. And suddenly I understood. This had never been about helping me. This had been about taking the ring. She'd convinced me it was worthless, so I'd just give it away. But what if the real appraiser had been right? What if this Robert was lying? I looked at him again, really looked. He wouldn't meet my eyes. His hands were shaking, slightly. He packed up his equipment too quickly, eager to leave. No, I said quietly. I'll keep it. For sentimental reasons. Diana's smile froze. But Margaret, what's the point? It's just sitting in a box. Let Emma enjoy it. It's mine, I said, louder now. It belonged to my grandmother. It's staying with me. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Diana's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw the anger underneath. Then she smiled again, that terrible, polite smile. Of course. It's your decision. They left within the hour. Diana hugged me goodbye, but it felt like being embraced by a snake. After they left, I held the ring in my palm, trying to understand what had just happened. Was it valuable or worthless? Had I been scammed, or was I being scammed now? I called the original jeweler, but he'd retired and moved away. I tried to find other appraisers, but COVID had closed many shops, and the ones open wanted $600 just for an evaluation. Money I didn't have to spare. So the ring went back in its box, and I tried to forget about it. 2 months later, Lisa called. It was late at night, unusual for her. She sounded upset. Mama, I need to talk to you about something. It's about the ring. My heart sank. What about it? Diana's been in my ear constantly. She wants that ring for Emma. She's convinced herself it would be perfect for Emma's dress-up collection. And honestly, Mama, it would make things so much easier if you just gave it to her. It's causing problems between me and Marcus. His mother thinks you're being selfish. Selfish? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Lisa, it's my family heirloom. Your great-great-great-great-grandmother's ring. It's not a toy. But it's not valuable, Mama. Diana's expert said. Diana's expert lied. Silence. Then Lisa sighed, that same exasperated sigh she'd been giving me since she was a teenager. Mama, why would he lie? He works for Christie's. He's one of the best in the country. You're being paranoid. I'm being protective of my family's history. Your family? Lisa's voice turned sharp. I'm your family. Emma is your family. But you care more about some ring than about keeping peace with your actual family. The words hit like physical blows. Lisa, that's not fair. You know what's not fair? I've worked so hard to build a good life, to fit in, to be successful. And every time you pull stuff like this, you remind everyone that I came from nothing. You remind Marcus's family that I'm the daughter of a poor immigrant who doesn't know what's real and what's fake. You embarrass me, Mama. You always have. She hung up. I sat in my dark apartment, the ring clutched in my hand, and cried until I thought I might die from it. My daughter was ashamed of me. My daughter thought I was embarrassing. Everything I'd done, every sacrifice, every missed moment, every dream deferred, had been to give her a better life. And she was ashamed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with the ring, turning it in my hands, wondering what my grandmother would think. She'd given this to me as a symbol of our family's strength, our ability to survive. But what had survival cost me? I'd survived immigration, poverty, racism, loneliness, and widowhood. I'd survived building a business from nothing. But I couldn't survive my own daughter's rejection. 3 months passed with no contact. No calls, no texts, no photos of Emma. I tried to call Lisa, but she didn't answer. I left voicemails that went unreturned. I was being punished for not giving away my family's ring to satisfy my daughter's mother-in-law. Then, on a Saturday morning in October 2023, someone knocked on my apartment door. It was Lisa. Behind her, in the hallway, I could see Emma, 4 years old now, with Lisa's eyes and Marcus's smile. My heart leaped. They'd come to visit. We were going to fix things. Lisa didn't smile when I opened the door. "We need to talk, Mama. Can we come in?" I ushered them inside, my hands shaking with nervous excitement. Emma ran immediately to the window, fascinated by the pigeons on the fire escape. She was beautiful, perfect, and she didn't know me at all. "Mama," Lisa said, not sitting down. "I'm going to say this quickly because it's hard. Marcus and I have been in therapy. We've been talking about boundaries and toxic relationships. And my therapist thinks that you and I have an unhealthy dynamic." "What?" I didn't understand. "You're manipulative, Mama. You use guilt to control me. You've done it my whole life, making me feel bad for wanting my own life, for being successful, for not being Chinese enough or grateful enough. And this thing with the ring is just another example of you putting your needs above your family's needs." I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. "Lisa, I never, and I can't have that toxicity around Emma. So I'm here to set a boundary. Until you can respect my family and stop creating drama, I think it's best if we have some distance. No calls, no visits, no contact. You're cutting me off." My voice came out as a whisper. "Because I won't give Diana a ring. Because you refuse to be reasonable. Because you always put yourself first. Because I need to protect my daughter from the same guilt trips you put me through." Emma tugged on Lisa's sleeve. "Mommy, who is this lady?" Lisa looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw something that killed me. Relief. She was relieved to have an excuse to cut me out. This wasn't about the ring. This was about her shame, her desire to erase where she came from. "This is Grandma Margaret," Lisa said to Emma. "Say goodbye to her." "Goodbye, Grandma Margaret," Emma parroted, a stranger saying goodbye to a stranger. They left, just like that. Lisa didn't hug me. She didn't look back. She walked out of my apartment, and my life like I was nothing. Like 40 years of sacrifice meant nothing. I stood at my window and watched them get into their rental car. I watched them drive away, and I understood, finally, that I'd lost my daughter years ago. I'd just been too stubborn to admit it. After that day, I became a ghost in my own life. I went through the motions, opening the laundry, serving customers, folding endless sheets, and pressing endless shirts. But inside, I was hollow. Mrs. Washington noticed. She asked if I was okay, and I couldn't even pretend anymore. I told her everything. She listened, and when I finished, she said something I'll never forget. "Margaret, some children don't deserve their mothers. You can't force someone to love you back." I kept the ring, not because it was valuable or because I wanted to spite Diana. I kept it because it was the only thing I had left that connected me to my grandmother, to my mother, to women who'd survived impossible things. Maybe it was worth $50,000. Maybe it was worth $300. Either way, its value to me was beyond price. Months passed. I turned 65, then 66. I started thinking about selling the laundry. My hands hurt constantly now. My back ached. I was tired in ways sleep couldn't fix. Mr. Park suggested I retire, move somewhere warm, find some peace. But peace felt impossible. How do you find peace when your only child has erased you? How do you rest when every quiet moment is filled with memories of what you've lost? One afternoon, about 3 months ago, a young woman came into the laundry. She was Chinese American, maybe 30, with a baby strapped to her chest. She needed someone to clean her wedding dress before she sold it. As I examined the beautiful silk, she told me about her mother, how her mother had worked 3 jobs to send her to college, how her mother never asked for anything, how she was trying to be a better daughter now before it was too late. I listened to her talk about taking her mother on a vacation, about teaching her granddaughter Chinese, so her mother could communicate with her, about honoring her sacrifice. And I felt something break open inside me. This stranger understood what my own daughter never would. After she left, I took out the ring. I really looked at it for the first time in years. And I realized something. It didn't matter what it was worth. What mattered was that I'd carried it through everything, across oceans, through poverty, through loss, and it had survived, just like I'd survived. I made a decision. I called a lawyer and updated my will. When I die, everything I own goes to charity, to organizations that help immigrant women start businesses, that support single mothers, that give people the chances I never had. The ring goes to a museum that specializes in Chinese immigrant history. Let it tell its story there. Let it help people understand the price of survival. Lisa will get nothing, not because I'm vindictive, but because she already got everything. My youth, my health, my dreams, my sacrifices. She got the education I never had, the opportunities one never had, the life I never had. She got to be ashamed of me, and that was her inheritance. I don't hate her. I wish I could, because hate is easier than this grief. But I don't hate her. I'm just tired of loving someone who sees that love as a burden. Last week, I put the laundry up for sale. A young Korean couple wants to buy it. They remind me of David and me 40 years ago, hopeful, hardworking, terrified. I'm selling it to them for less than it's worth because I remember what it feels like to need a chance. I don't know what I'll do next. Maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll volunteer. Maybe I'll finally rest. I've spent 66 years working for a future that never quite arrived, loving people who couldn't love me back, believing that sacrifice would be rewarded. Now I sit in my quiet apartment above my soon-to-be former business, and I turn my grandmother's ring on my finger. Real or fake, valuable or worthless, it survived. And so did I. Maybe that's enough. My grandmother once told me that our family treasures weren't made of gold or jade. They were made of sacrifice and hope. She was right, but not in the way either of us understood. The real treasure wasn't the ring. It was the strength to keep going when everything was taken from you. It was the courage to cross oceans and learn new languages and build something from nothing. It was surviving with dignity even when the people you love most wish you were someone else. I don't regret immigrating. I don't regret the sacrifices. I don't even regret loving my daughter with everything I had. What I regret is believing that sacrifice alone would be enough, that love alone would bridge every gap, that working hard enough would guarantee a happy ending. If you're listening to this, and you're a parent who's given everything to your children, hear me, your worth isn't measured by their gratitude. If you're listening and you're a child of immigrants who's struggled with shame about where you came from, hear me too, your parents' sacrifice was a gift, not a debt. Honor it by living well, not by erasing them. And if you're listening and you're just someone trying to survive, trying to build something, trying to keep going when everything hurts, hear this. You don't need anyone else to validate your strength. You don't need a valuable ring or a grateful child or a perfect ending. You just need to survive with your dignity intact. That's the real treasure. I'm Margaret Chun. I'm 66 years old. I crossed an ocean with nothing but hope and a ring sewn into my coat. I built a business with bleeding hands. I raised a daughter who grew up to be ashamed of me. And I survived it all. The ring might be real or fake, but my strength, that was always real. That was always mine. And no one can take that away.